So naturally, shortly after we finished our podcast yesterday, but not shortly after enough that we could just jump back on and redo the pod, the 49ers fired, or was reported by Matt Mayoko and Matt Barrows of The Athletic. They sent their tweets, both went out at 6:33 p.m. So I'm just going to credit both of them. They nailed it. Nice job, Matts. They reported that Nick Sorensen was going to be fired by the 49ers. Mayoko included the nugget that the 49ers are going to try and keep him on the coaching staff. Kyle Shanahan confirmed both of those things today in the presser. They couldn't have done this without A, having a couple of people in mind, and B, having a good idea that they were going to land one of those couple of people, right?
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear. I mean, all you have to do sort of is look at the 49ers history to connect the dots and piece together, that Robert Saleh, obviously an intriguing name, given his well-known history with Kyle Shanahan and his friendship with Kyle Shanahan. And Jeff Ulbrich, who the 49ers tried to hire last year before he was retained by the Jets and eventually named Robert Saleh's successor as interim head coach after Saleh was fired as head coach. So I would imagine that those two names are atop the 49ers list, and I think Kyle Shanahan probably views those guys as better options than bringing back Nick Sorensen for a second year.
I'd assume so.
And I think he's probably right. But at the same time, we're going to be on, the third straight offseason with a new defensive coordinator. And it's not because somebody like, D'Amico Ryans or Robert Saleh got a head coaching job elsewhere. It's because Kyle Shanahan has determined that his defensive coordinators aren't good enough. So we're kind of going from, Kyle Shanahan just keeps rolling sevens with these hires that he makes to his coaching staff, to now it's like, Kyle Shanahan's kind of searching a little bit for stability at the defensive coordinator spot. So we'll see. Robert Saleh is interviewing for the Jacksonville Jaguars head coaching vacancy. And then I guess after that, we'll have a better idea of where things stand with Kyle Shanahan and his potential return to the 49ers. But yeah, it's not terribly surprising. The 49ers defense was hardly memorable this year. I think it was top 10 in yardage, and I think DVOA numbers and the advanced metrics still indicated it was, a top 10 unit, but the turnovers weren't there. They were way down. Red zone defense wasn't very good. The run defense wasn't very good. And it was just overall really bad down the final stretch of the season, and that probably ended up being the nail in the coffin for Nick Sorensen.
Yeah, 87 points in the last 2 weeks doesn't probably help. But also, I Shanahan said Sorensen wasn't ready for the job, and they think that bringing in somebody new is the right move. And that's fair. When you start talking about communication issues week in and week out, and you're getting against the Vikings when they have 2nd and 9 at their own 2, and you're getting George Odom matched up one-on-one on Justin Jefferson, like that's a scheme problem. That's a coordinator problem. But on the other hand, I don't think any coordinator is going to be successful running this style of defense with the players the 49ers had in their front seven this year. And that's going to be the next big step is moving on from Sorensen is fine. Bringing in Jeff Ulbrich or Robert Saleh, an experienced defensive coordinator who has a good track record, is fine. But that doesn't change the need to overhaul their personnel, especially up front. Like that's still got to be priority number one, because I don't think any coordinator is going to be successful if they don't properly do that. Like that's the thing that jumps out the most to me.
Yeah, and Kyle Shanahan was asked today about the wide nine specifically, and there are NFL people who don't love the wide nine because what the wide nine is it's just lining up your defensive ends in a super wide technique well outside the tackle's shoulders, and what that does is create a more direct angle to the quarterback for defensive ends, where they can, instead of only having to go around the edge, they can from a geometry standpoint, they can go inside, they can go outside. They have a little bit more at their disposal in pass rushing situations, but a critique of it is it's probably pretty difficult to defend the run at times. And so you need really, like, Nick Bosa can do it because Nick Bosa is a dominant run defender. Right. But it asks a lot of your defensive tackles. And if you don't have elite defensive tackles, no matter how good your linebackers are, you're going to have a hard time defending the run consistently. And the Niners haven't had elite defensive tackles since DeForest Buckner left. And obviously Eric Armstead leaving, he was an elite run defender at defensive tackle too. So yeah, like if they're going to run that scheme, they are going to need to bolster the defensive line. That's nothing new. But you do wonder, is Kyle Shanahan going to move away from that, prototypical Seahawks style defense, not so much blitzing, a lot of zone, right? A lot of keep the ball in front of you. Like, are they going to stick to that, or are they going to try to get more multiple schematically? I guess that's kind of up to Kyle Shanahan. He did say he loves that scheme. I think he'll always sort of lean on that scheme. But I think Kyle Shanahan, the way he talked at his press conference, sounded more open to being diverse schematically than he has in recent history, which could lead to maybe going outside the box. And maybe that's, we didn't mention Brandon Staley. Brandon Staley is going to get another interview after interviewing last year and then being a special assistant. I think he coached nickel corners and helped game plan and was up in the booth and stuff. I would imagine, if Brandon Staley is the move, we're going to see a lot more different type of schematic adjustments from the 49ers defense.
Yeah, and I think if they're going to do that, if that's a switch that Kyle Shanahan wants to make or is open to making or they think is best, like now's the time to do it when you're kind of overhauling what you're doing in the front seven. Fred Warner's going to be there, but you don't know if Dre Greenlaw's coming back. You don't know really, like D. Winters was okay, but do you feel great about D. Winters as your starting will linebacker going forward? Like, TBD, you're going to need to completely revamp the defensive line, and a 4-3 defensive line requires something a little bit different than a 3-4. So maybe that's the kind of switch. But now, like I said, if you're ever going to do that, like now's the time to do it, where you're probably going to change a bunch of your personnel anyway, so you can change that to fit the new scheme. So really interested to see how they adjust, because I think Kyle Shanahan adjustments and thought process changes and all that are going to kind of define the next few years of 49ers football. Fascinated to see how that goes.
It's gonna be about bringing in personnel. It's just gonna be about bringing in personnel and keeping those guys healthy. Really, I think that's more important than anything they do schematically.
What's funny is counterintuitive to that. We talk about needing defensive line help and bolstering the defensive line. John Lynch confirmed today that the plan is to designate Javon Hargrave as a post-June 1 cut, which was the speculation when they redid his deal. It basically makes it more palatable to give him that post-June 1 release. They left the door open to bringing him back, but I'm guessing that doesn't happen. I don't think he's going to want to take a pay cut to hang out. But I'll never say never, I guess. But this is also just kind of the reality of the situation the 49ers are in, where, yeah, you might need defensive line help, but that may need to be cheaper help, like draft picks or lower cost free agents that you go and maximize their skill sets. So it looks like Javon Hargrave is indeed out after 19 games with the 49ers.
Yeah, Nick Wagner wrote on ESPN, with the post-June 1 designation, he will have basically an $8.6 million dead cap money hit in 2025 and a $17.5 million dead cap hit in 2026 instead of a $25 million cap hit in 2025 alone. So what the post-June 1 designation does is allow you to spread the dead cap hit over 2 seasons.
Okay.
And obviously, for the 49ers, that's a pretty substantial difference. Talking about $17 million difference in cap allocations to one player that is not going to be on your team. I'm not entirely sure how that would all work if they restructured his deal and he ended up coming back. I would imagine that he's not going to come back. And I would imagine that, the 49ers, I'm pretty convinced that they're going to take a defensive lineman, potentially one of the defensive tackles from Michigan with the 11th overall pick. So if that's the case and you think that guy's good enough to start right away, you don't need to spend, however much money on bringing Javon Hargrave back. And you don't even know how good he's going to be. I didn't think he was particularly good before he got hurt this year.
He was the thing is he wasn't great in weeks 1 or 2, but he was really, really good in week 3, and then he got hurt that game.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's tough.
That's fair. And last year he showed signs, but I think he had a thumb injury that he was playing through that kind of limited him as the season wore on last year. So wouldn't surprise me if he's elsewhere.
Wearing my Ohio State hat today, so I got to tell you, thumbs down on the Michigan defensive tackles. Two thumbs down.
I mean, being the big Ohio State game that you saw what they did against our Buckeyes in that game.
Oh, so. Dominant. Excited to see what they do in the playoff. Oh, never mind. Got him. Trash talk. Am I right? Rivalries. Deebo Samuel. Yeah, got him.
Ohio State is in the playoff, Kyle.
No, I know. Michigan's not, though.
I see.
Burn. Still working on being an Ohio State fan. It's fine. Let me cook. Deebo Samuel, we've speculated, a lot of people have speculated that this would be his last year with the 49ers. And then you go look at all of his tackle breaking numbers and all his peripheral stats, or just his traditional box score stats, and you go, wow, he wasn't as effective this year as he's been in years past. But it sounds like the 49ers are very much interested in keeping him around for at least the last year of his deal. John Lynch said basically today, not interested in losing good players. Deebo's a good player. He's done a lot for this team. Did you read that as, wow, Deebo Samuel's sticking around? Or did you read that as trying to maximize trade value? Or both?
I think my read was a little bit yes to each. I think it could go either way. But it was also, he's not going to say anything that would lead to Deebo Samuel spouting off on his podcast, Instagram Live, social media, whatever. Like, because Deebo has kind of proven to be a little bit volatile when it comes to messaging. And I think, I do think it behooves John Lynch to say we're keeping him. Like, he's contributed a lot. He's under contract. Like, whenever, I would be shocked if the 49ers didn't have trade conversations in the offseason. And, however tangible you think this leverage is, NFL front offices aren't going to say anything to besmirch players who they might trade because it could be used against them in these trade talks. So for him to say, yeah, he's going to be here, maybe it's a vote of confidence in Deebo and that, yeah, he is going to come back. But I could also see the scenario where he's not saying anything to annoy Deebo and to create sort of this social media firestorm that can happen when Deebo Samuel goes off. And also wanting to, preserve leverage or at least control the narrative if and when they do have those trade discussions, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it felt like two different things. And I think this is why I'm in agreement with you. This is how the interaction went. The media had asked about Javon Hargrave and his situation. And just to confirm, the question was asked, start a free agency, he'll be free to sign. John Lynch says yes. Next question. And with Deebo's situation, John Lynch says Deebo's under contract. And that was it. And then it was, do you expect him back? And that's when he said, yeah, a good player and has done a ton for this organization. We're not in the business of losing good players. And the Deebo's under contract answer very much had the feel of like, I hope nobody asked me what we're going to do with Deebo. And then they did. And he goes, oh, okay. And that was why, if you just read his answer in a vacuum, it's like, wow, dang, Deebo Samuel's going to be back. But then when you piece those two things together, it reads the way, to me anyway, the way you explained it. Like, this is very much just not going to inflame the situation. Maybe he's back, maybe he's not. But like last year, there were reports that the Niners had like a second round pick on the table for Deebo. Yeah. Or they were in trade talks for a second or whatever. I got lost in the just ridiculous reporting around the Niners receiving core last year. But I would guess if the New England Patriots call this year and say, hey, want our second round pick for Deebo Samuel, the Niners are like, yep.
Yeah, I think they'd do that 38th overall or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, they would do that. I don't think that's going to be on the table based on the season that Deebo just had.
No, and I don't. To that end, I also don't know that the Niners are eager to just release him. So I'm interested to kind of see how this goes.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of variance in the situation. I absolutely could see a scenario where they're like, yeah, we'll bring him back. We looked really good in Miami. If he has like Deebo's at the point in his career where he can't really coast. Like if he wants one more bite at the apple and a big payday, he needs to have another good season, or else I think NFL teams are going to kind of move on from him in terms of thinking about him in 2021 terms when he was an all-pro, right?
Yep.
He's the type, like Deebo's one of the few receivers who's going to age like a running back. And I think we already saw that, right? Just the physical brand that he plays, it's not, it's not going to be like he's going to be running routes for 15 years and that type of receiver. That's just not him. So the 49ers could be banking on, he's motivated. He's trying to get one more contract, whether it's with us or somebody else. And maybe he can be a productive player in 2025. What was interesting too, and I wonder if this contributed to Deebo's lack of production at all, the Niners didn't have Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, and Brandon Ayuk on the field at once together all season.
That's crazy. Like, it makes sense just given the timelines, but that's kind of wild.
Yeah. Because, I mean, you think about it, they're like very complementary players to one another, right? Like,
yeah. Yep.
Like having Brandon Ayuk can help isolate Deebo Samuel, and having Christian McCaffrey can open things up a little bit for everybody because of his gravity, and you can use him in motion and line him up anywhere, and also have him as a check down option. So, not having those guys, I think, would also negatively impact Deebo Samuel's production, on top of Deebo maybe not being the same physically as he used to be.
Yeah, I think there's something to that. And maybe the 49ers want to bring him back because they know he was dealing with some injury all year, or that he was really adversely impacted by the pneumonia that he got in week, what was that, 7?
Yeah,
like maybe they just know he battled through this and then had a really good game at the end of the year. Was that against
Miami?
Had a great game against Miami. It was like, oh, okay, he still has that. Like, it's still there. And if it is, like, if you get that version of Deebo Samuel for a full season, like, yeah, it makes all the sense in the world to bring him back. This isn't getting him out the door just to get him out the door, but it's like, if you can save a little money by letting a bad version of Deebo Samuel go, you got to do it.
Well, it also might be like, well, if we get rid of Deebo, we have no idea when Brandon Ayuk's coming back.
Yeah.
We're banking a lot on Ricky Pearsall, who, I think is going to be good and showed signs late in the season in particular.
I agree.
But like, they have needs. They have serious needs along the offensive and defensive lines. They might have a need at linebacker. They might have a need at corner. They're probably going to draft another running back. Like, they have needs, and getting rid of Deebo Samuel would only add to them. So
yeah, for sure.
That standpoint, like, even if Deebo is a fraction of what he was in 2021, he might still have value to them based on, their roster needs and the fact that they have holes to fill elsewhere, and they probably would prefer not to have a hole at receiver also.
Yeah, I have a couple of things on this. One, I think regardless whether Deebo Samuel's in San Francisco or not, I think one of the things Kyle Shanahan has to do this offseason is not. It's the point you just made. It feels like the Niners offense is really not what's the word I'm going to, like, it's vital that those three players are on the field at the same time. Ayuk, McCaffrey, and Samuel. And when you remove one of them, like, it makes everything exponentially harder. Like, we've seen that before in games where, like, Deebo gets hurt. It just seems like San Francisco just has nothing. Like, there's just no adjustment to make because, man, all these plays are predicated on this Deebo motion, and all these plays are predicated on Deebo doing this, and defense is reacting this way. And when he's not on the field, or when he's not as effective, like, the offense just isn't as effective.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things I think they got to do this offseason is not be so reliant on him being all-pro version of himself, and defenses reacting that way. The other thing, real quick, I just want to talk about this since we're talking about Deebo. Terrell Owens was on 95.7 The Game on Tuesday, and I love Terrell Owens to death. Terrell Owens was my first favorite player. I still think he's great. He's Mount Rushmore 49er for me, right?
Do you think he could still play right now?
It could 100% still play. Dude is in great shape. Underrated great season was his last year in the NFL with the Bengals. It's incredible. He's a remarkable player. It took him too long to get in the Hall of Fame. But anyways, he said something to the effect of, he joined Willard and Dibs, and he said something to the effect of, Brandon Ayuk only had a good year in 2023 because defenses were doubling Deebo Samuel. And that is just false. Like, that's just wrong. That's just not correct at all. Like, there's no, I just, that really irked me. Cause he's like, Brandon Ayuk's got to prove he can do it when he's the guy, and he's got to prove that he has some dog in him and all this other stuff. It's like, what are you talking about? Brandon Ayuk got doubled all the time.
T.O. not a ball knower.
Not great. No, I think T.O. knows ball. I don't think T.O. watches that closely. I think if he did, he would change his opinion. Anyways,
T.O. probably not using the clicker and the projector to watch the All-22.
Well, that's clear. T.O., I got an NFL Plus login. You can have it. Love T.O. Shout out T.O. Maybe the Niners signed him. I don't know. Trent Williams also going to be back. And pretty unequivocally, I thought that was one of the more interesting answers, was that John Lynch got asked directly, is there any uncertainty about Trent Williams and him playing in 2025? And John Lynch just said no. And then said Trent's doing well. He had a bruise in the ankle, blah, blah, blah. But like, I was fully expecting that to be we're giving Trent time with his family, and he's getting him time to heal up, and that'll be a decision that he makes on his own time, and da-da-da-da. He just went, nope, no uncertainty. He's good. Like, all right, well, there's that.
For me, like, I don't doubt that John Lynch believes that until we hear Trent Williams say it. Like, Trent Williams he didn't do the locker room clean out interviews.
Mm-hmm.
It's just tough because, he went through a lot of personal tragedy with, the twins that he obviously tragically lost during the pregnancy process. And I don't know, I don't think he's spoken on the record or publicly since all that and his ankle injury. And obviously it would be me speculating, but like the point I guess I'm trying to make here is that Trent Williams in the past has said he wants to play till he's 40 or however long. Like, longevity is part of his something he wants to have on his resume when he eventually goes to the Hall of Fame, right? But like, extreme personal circumstances have a way of changing your viewpoint on your career when you've, like, Trent Williams is going to be 37 in July.
Man,
like, that's, like, it's, and we don't know how the ankle injury was significant enough to keep him out of action. We don't know if it's, like, something that's going to linger for years and years. But until we get a firm confirmation from Trent Williams himself that he's going to be back next year, like, I understand John Lynch saying what he said, but I'm not all the way there. Like, it wasn't cut and dry for me personally that, like, oh, John Lynch said Trent's going to be back, so Trent's going to be back. Let's see if and when he shows up to the offseason program and but maybe we'll just come back. I don't know. It's me writing.
I assume John Lynch says that because they had some confirmation from Trent Williams.
Yeah.
Where he said, I'm playing. I went through that. Yeah. Now I know the personal tragedy could change the calculus for him for sure, and that'd be 100% understandable. But I don't think, from just a football standpoint, keeping it there, I can't imagine he would do the whole contract thing last offseason and then be like, nah, you know what, I'm good.
Yeah,
maybe I'm wrong. This is gonna look weird on YouTube because I've got to turn my light on. You want to talk about Brock Purdy real quick? Sure. Or what John Lynch said about Brock Purdy, I should say.
Yeah.
Breaking news, John Lynch said that Brock is their guy. That's big time.
Yeah. He said that Brock's their guy. Kyle Shanahan said he's a leader of the team. They want to sign him. They've kind of obfuscated when talking about timing of the contract. And they were asked pretty directly today about something we've talked about a lot, in that, like, do you want to get this done sooner rather than later? And they didn't really answer that directly, which is, negotiations are tricky. I would imagine they want to get that done as soon as possible. But yeah, saying Kyle Shanahan coming out so strongly and not being ambiguous as he has in the past, like, you remember, late in Jimmy Garoppolo's time, like, it was Kyle Shanahan would say things that would make you believe that, oh, maybe replacing Jimmy Garoppolo is on the table. Like, we'll look into everything, right? Like that type of stuff.
Right.
This was very much not the we'll look into everything at quarterback. This was a heavy endorsement of Brock Purdy, and a sign that the 49ers want to and plan to sign him to a long-term contract.
Sure.
But will that happen in a timely manner? I guess that's all TBD.
Something that stuck out to me that annoyed me in John Lynch's answer is he said, playing at a high level, continue to lead, continue to play at a high level. We have every interest in him being around. The way this thing goes, these press conferences are necessary, but always kind of silly because Kyle's coaching. We spend time together all the time, and there are big issues that affect the team, but he's just getting off coaching. He's had his door shut for 2 days doing exit interviews. We were just up, but we were talking about our players. We'll have some time here in the coming weeks to sit down and put our whole plan together. That's obviously a priority, that position, and we'll give it that attention. Okay, so you're going to have another press conference in a couple weeks then to answer these questions? Don't say it's silly. Like, this is
after they hire, or maybe after they sign Brock to the contract.
Sure, I guess, but all right, then fine. Then put it off next time once you guys have gotten a chance to chat. I don't know. And the other thing that bothered me about that is, like, you've known now. You've not had these talks at all. Last year, you guys didn't sit down and go like, hey, here's kind of the plan. Okay, we've seen what the quarterback market looks like. Come on, man.
I think what he was
this
doing
is silly.
I think what he was doing was he was trying to nip it in the bud from the standpoint of getting like 5 questions in a row about Brock.
Sure.
So he's just getting out in front of that potentially and saying, yeah, we haven't really talked about it yet, when, like, obviously they have. But just didn't want to sit up there being like, do you think Brock's going to hold out? Do you think Brock wants $60 million a year? Do you think Brock, like all that stuff? Like, I think he was just saying, like,
I guess,
throwing out, what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, just getting out ahead of it.
Sure. I guess. Anyway,
it does have to be tough to talk about negotiations publicly before the negotiations happen.
Yeah, no doubt. But, like, if you're going to say the press conference is silly, then okay, then have another one in a couple weeks.
I don't think anybody in the media wants another 49ers press conference unless it's a
good point.
Unless it's a Brock Purdy contract extension.
Yeah, that's a good point. Especially since that press conference in a couple of weeks would be like, I'm not going to talk about it publicly.
Right, exactly.
All right, fine. I retract my disgust. Clay Kubiak also moved to offensive coordinator, which sounds just ceremonial. Shanahan basically said he's been the offensive coordinator. He's just not been called that. Oh, okay.
Well, it sounds like he's going to get a raise.
Oh, yeah,
so maybe not ceremonial for him, but if he'll get a raise.
But
and
to the people listening to this podcast, that's it.
Yeah, sure. But also as offensive coordinator, he would be required to speak to the media every week. So he'd get a raise. He'd have to talk to the media every week, and presumably he would start getting head coaching interviews. Maybe next year's hiring cycle if he's still good.
And I imagine he's going to call plays in the preseason again.
Right.
Called
we didn't
plays
really
in
talk
week
about him
18.
calling. Yeah, we didn't really talk about that.
That's kind of crazy. Hey,
Yeah.
try and tell Clay Kubiak that game was meaningless.
Oh gosh.
That's kind of cool. I feel like that's not something Kyle Shanahan would have done 2 years ago. That just handed over play calling duties for a game.
I'm trying to remember if he ever did it with Mike McDaniel. Maybe he didn't.
It's the first time he's ever not called plays in a game.
In a regular season game.
Yeah, but they also haven't had like a ton of opportunities because Mike McDaniel was the OC in 2021, and they were good that year. There weren't a lot of games that just like, oh yeah, hey, in case you suck at this, it's all good. Yeah. So I don't imagine if the 49ers bounce back in 2025 and are good again and going to the NFC title game, I don't imagine Clay Kubiak's going to be around for long.
Probably
whether as a head coach or a play calling OC somewhere.
How many Kubiaks are there?
Clint, Clay, right Gary. Gary's not in the league, but he was. It's right. Clint, Clay, and is there one more? It's like Cutter or something.
Does it start with a K?
I don't know. I would assume so because Clint and Clay do. Kyle?
Kyle Kubiak?
Hang on, I'm on Wikipedia, the premier source of information.
The preeminent information source on the Kubiaks.
Did you know that Gary Kubiak is a football advisor for players and coaching staff of the Polish team Panthers Wrocław of the European League of Football?
Did you not know that?
I didn't. I just learned that today. I think that's the same league where Jim Tom Sula is like a back-to-back champion as the head coach of the Hamburg Claymores or something.
The Rhine Fire.
The Rhine Fire, that's it. That's definitely what it is. Clint, Clay, and Klein. I don't think Klein is in the NFL, though. He was a wide receiver at Rice. Oh, he's currently an area scout for the Dallas Cowboys. Wow. Shout out to Klein.
Just must be killing it over there.
Yeah.
Who do you think? Okay, so most likely to least likely 49ers defensive coordinators. Robert Saleh, Brandon Staley, Jeff Ulbrich.
Starting at most likely, I'm going to go Ulbrich 1, Saleh 2, Staley 3.
Yeah, I was going to go the same way. I thought you would have said Saleh 1.
No, I'm not totally sure that he's not going to get the Jags head coaching job.
That would be wild.
Like
I don't know how much
been
like
a coach
knowing
there before.
Him and knowing Trent Baalke, it doesn't really seem like a great fit to me.
Yeah, that's fair, but I also don't know. Like, I don't think Ben Johnson's going to want to go there. I don't think Mike Vrabel's going to go there.
Well, there also just might not be any fits with Trent Baalke too.
Right. That's what I'm saying. So like, if none of the premier kind of offensive guys want to go that way, and Robert Saleh's like, yeah, I'll be a head coach. Like I have the personality to step in and rebuild this team and kind of work with Trent Baalke or go toe to toe with Trent Baalke or whatever, out alpha Trent Baalke. I could see it. But I think if he doesn't land that, if you guaranteed me he's not going to be the head coach in Jacksonville, I'd probably put him 1.
One thing I have heard people say is that they think maybe Robert Saleh will want to have some success away from Kyle Shanahan to sort of establish his own.
That's it. Sure. That
path,
makes sense.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't know if I believe that to be true necessarily, but I know there are people who believe that. But yeah, I mean, Bob Saleh has 7 children, so if you can go get that head coaching contract, do it, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. Shout out to him and his 9 kids.
7
gas, no brakes.
We'll see. Dude, seriously. Personal note, big Bob Saleh guy.
Just
high
dude.
quality human being. Have enjoyed all of my interactions with him. He's just sound individual.
Yeah, good guy. A hugger, I've heard.
Big time hugger.
Nothing worse than a guy. Nothing worse than a guy who works out a lot and is also an aggressive hugger. Right. Just the worst.
Right, like the guy who'll like break your hand with a handshake and also like send your back out of alignment with a hug.
Yeah, and then the it's not a quick pat on the back; it's like 2 slams on the back. It's like, God damn it!
Right, knocks the wind out of you. Can't breathe.
Like, really enjoyed this interaction. This is good. Thanks.
Yeah, that means well.
All right. Anyways,
all right. Anything else?
That's all I got. No, I don't think so. I don't have anything else to say. Can't wait to dive into free agency and mock drafts. I'm already neck deep in mock drafts, bro.
Yeah, that I need to start going on this Kings road trip. Boston, Chicago, Milwaukee, great cities. Going to be freezing.
A lot of time to grind mocks, though.
I will have some time. Maybe I can download some all 22 to the laptop. Dive in on my flights.
Just on your you need notes on the laptop and then an iPad set up next to it with the tape. Yeah, that's the.
Hey, are you using this tray table? Do you mind? Just like
if you want to be a real grinder. Do you mind? Are you using this? You're a guy that when they say please close all laptops, you've just still got it open.
Right.
Because you're the one person it doesn't apply to.
Just like, actually, I'm working on third down here. Dude,
No, you said no. I understand, but you don't understand. That underrated airplane asshole, by the way, is person that like as you're taking off, they're like, okay, yeah, I'm on the plane now. And they're on the phone. It's like, bro, they said to shut that shit off. You gotta have it off. You can't make a phone call while you're in the air, obviously. You've got 12 minutes that you gotta have that shit on off.
Yeah. I try to avoid a plane conversation on the phone if I can.
Oh my God. It's
uncomfortable. It's just uncomfortable.
I don't want to talk on the phone at all. Much less in a metal tube full of people.
Right. Where your voice is like 10 times louder than it feels like it is.
Exactly.
You're like whispering and like you're making a baby cry 4 rows back.
Yeah, I don't want one person to hear my conversation, much less 212.
Right.
Anyways. All right. I think that's it. Subscribe, rate, review. Yes. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Candlestick Chronicles. Search it on YouTube. We're the first ones there. Subscribe. Hit the thumbs up. Comment. All that. We'll talk to you next time.
Please do. See ya.